Hey, everybody. I am back with another live. It's going to be another fairly quick one on the subject of the movie, the cult classic, Jaws. Oh, that movie was so awesome. I'm sure pretty much everybody loves Jaws. How could you not enjoy that classic? Um, the movie first came out in 75, the original Jaws. Then in 78, Jaws 2, which was Jaws 2 might be my favorite. I like the first one, but the second one was probably my favorite. Then you have Jaws 3D, came out in 1983. And then the final Jaws, fourth Jaws installment that they made came out. It was called Jaws the Revenge, July of 87. That was the final Jaws. So that was 35 years ago when the final Jaws film was made. And the question is, let's go through the email here to Justin Explains Everything. Will Hollywood ever reboot Jaws? They've done so many. I'm just reading the email here. They've rebooted and made sequels as well of so many cult classics. Even up to this day, they still keep rebooting old films. I mean, and it's true. I mean, they've made tons of Terminator movies. They even rebooted Total Recall, a classic movie with Arnold. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. They did Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Johnny Depp. I could just go on. There's way too many classic films to even mention that have been rebooted or sequeled. And a lot of these classics, they're great classics, but it's tough to reboot certain classics 30, 40, 50 years later because of time change and it's a different generation. But with Jaws, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm actually really surprised that they haven't tried to reboot Jaws in these last 35 years since 1987. I was 1 year old the last time they made Jaws, the final Jaws film. Let's see, what else was the question? It's such a timeless movie. The setting of it, where it takes place, everything is just so timeless. You can't really go wrong with it. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, to answer your question, I don't know if Hollywood will ever reboot Jaws again. I personally think they should. And I'm normally not a big fan of reboots. Trust me, I don't like when they keep rebooting all these classics. And to be honest, if they never reboot Jaws again, if they never make another Jaws film again, I'll be fine with that. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I'm not going to be disappointed or upset. I guess I'm just a little surprised is all. Not really upset, but surprised that nobody in Hollywood has tried making another Jaws, unless, who was it who created Jaws? Steven Spielberg was one of the main guys, directors. Unless Spielberg or somebody has a clause or something, a written contract on not being allowed to touch Jaws, I don't really know. But it's one of the highest grossing films in the entertainment industry. I mean, like I said, pretty much everybody loves Jaws, and people that don't even know, and people that haven't seen Jaws know about it. I mean, it's one of the first things you think of when you go to a beach. Let's be honest. When you go to the beach, at least people from my age group, my generation, one of the first things that pops into your mind, at least one time at the beach, is Jaws. I mean, it's such a classic. It's so timeless. I'm really surprised, though, that I was trying to find information on it. It doesn't look like they're even thinking about making a sequel to Jaws or a reboot of Jaws. It doesn't. I mean, I was reading on the Wikipedia page about it. I was reading in different fan pages about Jaws. All it really has here under the information about Jaws is it says for the future, but this is already past. This was already a couple of years ago. It says in July 2018, which was just 4 years ago, Steven Spielberg expressed interest in a Jaws prequel, a film focusing on the 1945 sinking of the USS Indianapolis, featuring a younger version of Robert Shaw's Quint in a supporting capacity. Then it says in May 2020, Shaw's grandson, Ferdia Shaw, expressed interest in potentially portraying the young Quint in the future, should the film ever be produced. But that's still not a Jaws. It's not really another Jaws movie, but so I don't know. It doesn't sound like Spielberg or anybody in Hollywood is really even working on or thinking about having Jaws in the future, being recreated or rebooted. It doesn't appear that way, that Jaws is going to be in the works for anything, at least in the foreseeable future. It just surprises me, though. In that type of film, Jaws, it literally is ageless, and you can make it forever until the end of time, because there's always going to be sharks. There's always going to be a aggressive great white sharks in the ocean. People's always going to love going to the beach, taking kids there. So it surprises me they haven't made more Jaws movies ever since their final 87 film, Jaws the Revenge. Now, don't get me wrong, you could ruin a good thing by overdoing it, overkill. And I'm normally, like I said, not a big fan of like rebooting these classic films, because usually when you reboot a classic, it ends up being garbage or at least subpar. But with Jaws, man, I don't see how they could even screw that up. All it involves is basically a shark, a beach, and people. That's it. It doesn't even matter like what generation you're in, whether it's the 2020s or the 1980s or next century. It's just such a basic premise, but yet so catchy and cool. And so many people have shark phobias and are afraid of sharks. Hell, I'm one of them. I'm terrified of sharks. I'm terrified of going deep out into the water at the beach. So for people like me and millions of other people that have phobias of sharks, the movie Jaws is still relevant, even today in 2022. I don't know. I mean, if I had to bet money on whether at some point in time in the future, whether it be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that they'll eventually do another Jaws project, if I had to bet on it, I don't know. Part of me says I feel like they got to do it again eventually, especially if you go by Hollywood's track record of them rebooting all of these classics. It just surprises me that Jaws has not been one of them yet. Maybe it will be in the future. Maybe Jaws will be another classic film that they end up rebooting and doing again. Obviously with a totally new cast, new actors. But it just surprises me because it's such an ageless story. The story never ages. I mean, it's not like, I'm trying to think of some other classic movies that, for example, Friday the 13th. Those are mostly camp-based movies, kids on, Camp Crystal Lake. Nowadays, a lot of people don't even camp as much anymore as they used to. So like that story over time can slowly expire. Thinking about some other classic Back to the Future movies. If they were to make another Back to the Future movie, they would definitely have to change the year because it's now 2022. That movie only goes up to 2015 when they go into the future. So they would have to change the year around, and things would be. They could do it, but it would be more difficult. But Jaws, it doesn't matter what year it is. Sharks are always going to be sharks. They're always going to be a problem if you get close to them. They're always going to be an issue. Although I know shark attacks are rare, they don't happen that often. But I'm just saying, sharks are always going to be a thing. Sharks are not going to, become outdated. It's just always going to be a thing. So it just really shocks me because I think Jaws, of all the classics, all these classic movies, Jaws might be like the only one, or at least one of the few, that they could just reboot as many times as they want, and it's not going to get old, and it's not going to ever become outdated, because it's shark attacks. It's a shark attack. People get attacked every year by sharks. Even to this day, I mean, I think there was just somebody recently that got attacked, I saw in the news, by a shark. So, I mean, Jaws is current. It's always going to be a current subject, no matter what year it is. So I'm surprised Hollywood has not jumped on this yet, over these last 35 plus years, and made another Jaws film. It could either be a sequel or a reboot. Reboot meaning they just redo it. Sequel would mean they add on to it. I mean, I'm just surprised. Like I said, I'm not a fan of reboots typically. I just prefer them leaving classics alone, classic films alone. But just being neutral here, non-biased, I am surprised Hollywood hasn't tried to make a buck off of Jaws over these last 35 years. Really does surprise me. Well, I think I answered your question. I think I covered all the bases on this subject. I think it's a great question, actually. I actually was wondering the same thing a few years ago. I was talking to my brother about this. I was like, man, I'm surprised Hollywood hasn't touched Jaws since the 1980s. You would think they would do something with it. There's just so many ideas for Jaws. Jaws is limitless. They could do whatever they want with that movie because, like I said, it's timeless. It never ages. Kids today would be just as afraid of a Jaws type movie as they were in the 70s and 80s. So I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. It's not like today kids are like, oh, I'm not scared of sharks anymore. People have always been afraid of sharks. So it's always going to be a great story, just a fun story, Jaws. Anyways, guys, before I wrap this up, I'm going to do my usual. I thank all of you for supporting the channel. Subscriptions help when you guys hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That helps the channel out greatly. Also, liking these videos, these streams helps out a lot too. Leave comments down below in the comment section for questions, suggestions. Also, you could go to the About section where my email is and send me a request, like I'm doing for this video. Request on whatever subject, as long as I can understand the subject and it's not too controversial or too inappropriate. So yeah, guys, that is going to do it. You guys have a great rest of your Thursday. I'm probably going to watch some of the U.S. Open golf. Today's the first round of the U.S. Open. That's going to do it, guys. You guys take care. Again, I appreciate the support. Stay safe out there. Don't do anything crazy, and I'll see you on the next stream. Peace out, everyone.